safety car pulls off to the right-hand side of the track and will make that trip back to the pit lane. And hopefully we won't see it again for the next 13 laps or 40 minutes, whichever comes first. Here comes the grid up the hill looking for the green flag. There's an acceleration zone in which the pole sitter has the right to set the pace, and that's exactly what Josh Schmidt does, stepping on the loud pedal as the green flag waves. The field's starting to come to life, forming lines and drafting, bump drafting at times, a big component of B-Spec racing. It's the maroon Sonic to the inside, the pole sitter, but getting overhauled by the outside pole sitter, Myles Goertz, who's able to sweep ahead into the lead of the race, and the pole sitter Schmidt's been eaten up, dropping back 2 spots.
Yeah, commanding move from Goertz down into turn 1. Schmidt looks a little uncomfortable with the cold tires this morning, and he's got Caleb Patry up his flank. They're side by side with a great start for Eric Jägel in the red Honda Fit around the outside. The poor start, I would say, Dan Conway in that Wasabi Green Mazda 2 was trying to work with Rich Roman, who's got him to second. Conway, he's being freight trained down to maybe 8th under the Sargento Bridge.
You said that Goertz and Patry would try to work together. I think we saw a little bit of that, and also Richard Roman maybe flying under the radar a bit more than you'd expect for a 2-time and defending national champion, but a pretty good start. This is the run down to turn 5. Heavy braking zone, downhill, super challenging. Really good run through there from Goertz, though, who's able to pull ahead into the lead, but now coming under attack.
That's that second gear in the Mazda 2, just absolute power move up into turn 6, and the BOP in this class, the balance of performance is fantastic, but they are still different cars. There's also a huge move from Stuart Black in the other Chevy Sonic, blue and white in the background, a big move into turn 5. He's picked up, I think, 6th or 7th. Pekarczyk also up from 10th into 6th.
How about that? Big start for Pekarczyk to get up those positions there in the early stages. Roman, the 2-time and defending champion, but making his first runoff start in this car. He had raced in a Mini over the last couple of years, but made the switch to the Mazda platform and showcasing why here in the early stages.
Here comes that first-gen Honda Fit up under the inside of Josh Schmidt, who continues to fall just ever so slightly now. Picks up some pace around the outside of the carousel. They're going to go side by side into the kink. The 41 defends. How is this going to go?
Typically it's not a great idea, but they're going to give it a try anyway. Side by side they enter, side by side they exit, and it looks like Patry was able to pick up that spot, and he takes that Fit up another, or excuse me, yes, it is that Honda Fit up one more position.
A little bit of smoke out of the back of Stuart Black Chevy Sonic. We'll have to keep an eye on that one, but right now, as they run, Goertz, Roman, no, Roman to the front, excuse me, then Goertz, and then we've got a great race for third still happening. Patry with pressure from Schmidt and Jägel. Jägel is on fire this morning.
And Patry knows this track so well. The family has extensive racing experience here. His grandfather is a multi-time national champion. In fact, won a couple of them right here at Road America. Looking to follow in the family footsteps here on home turf. Lap number 1 about to be complete, and it is the 2-time and defending champion at the front. But for the first time in Mazda power, he takes the lead here on the opening lap and will control the field here on lap number 1.
Jägel's going to shove Josh Schmidt around the outside of Caleb Patry. He's going to fall from 3rd to 5th down the front straightaway, and it's a whole scrum behind Dan Conway. Showed the nose on Stuart Black just into turn 14. Got a little bit balked, and that allowed Blair Defenbaugh to get a huge run. Unfortunately, Defenbaugh wasn't able to realize that he gained from it. In fact, drops a couple positions in that white, teal, and purple Honda Fit, and they're still battling so hard. That's Chris Taylor in the orange Mazda 2 flying just off track limits at turn 1. No track limits in force here this weekend. It's all fair play.
Busy weekend for Defenbaugh because in addition to running in this race, he's part of the SCCA's marketing team and has quite a few duties in that capacity too, but has a lot of friends and family here helping him out as he makes his racing debut at Road America. He was here in an SCCA capacity a year ago, had not driven here until this event though.
Talk about teammates and intentions. At this point, I would say you kind of have to work with what you get. Gail Corley way down the inside on Pekarczyk. Does he see him? Yes. Corley with a huge move, though, on Dan Conway, who's having a bit of a nightmare start of this race. He was, again, intending to run towards the front. He was leading much of last year's race until some contact took him out. He's found himself battling in the second pack of B-Spec. He's going to need to calm this down and try to work with somebody, maybe Rob Pekarczyk, to get up towards that top 5.
The Virginian started 5th. He's dropped down to 9th. We'll have to gather it back up with 11.5 laps to go It's still Roman out in front. Goertz runs second. Patry in third. Schmidt-Jägel the top five as the field makes their way toward the carousel, which you mentioned is the start of remarkably a full throttle run. Oh, problems for one of the Cork Sport cars with a puff of smoke. That Mazda's off track to the right-hand side.
Very unfortunate for Derek Ambrose here. Looks like a big mechanical failure in the front of that car. He has the most starts in the runoffs of any driver in this field. Unfortunately, not going to finish this one, it looks like, as I think that's the outside, or maybe that's driver's right coming out of the carousel. Tough spot to end up. I'm not sure where that was exactly.
Been on the run into the carousel, but you're right, hard to tell. But yeah, 12th start in the runoffs for Derek Ambrose. Will not go the way he had hoped, suffice it to say, and we do have to go full course yellow. Here we go. The field approaching that acceleration zone, and Richard Roman will dictate the pace. Field in good alignment, single file coming up this hill, and it is a massive hill as well, especially in one of these low horsepower cars to try and negotiate and get to the top of it. And the back of the field is still coming up the hill. Give you an idea of how long this train is, but it looks like Roman has started the acceleration. Schmidt pops out of line. That's the bull-sitting car, sitting third in the train, and he's got some help. Meanwhile, it's 3 wide further back in the pack, and already chaos has erupted here in B-Spec.
Wow, Derek Blair Deffenbaugh shoving Stuart Black around the outside. They're side by side in the turn one. Roman's going to lead the way. Eric Jägel looks like he likes the shot of chances with Josh Schmidt. Deffenbaugh way wide off in turn one, and Stephanie Anderson got a little bit swamped at that green flag, but she's still in the side-by-side battle down into turn three. Bit of a check. There's Conway through on the inside with Jägel. Schmidt, he has the poorest start so far of this reset.
How about that? Again, struggled at the initial start as well from the tire rack pole position. It's a bit of a surprise. The car's really been flexing muscle here over the course of the week so far, but he'll have to gather it back in. Meanwhile, Roman continues to show the pace out in front of this raging pack. Here we go, down into turn 5, and Goertz is on the assault, looking to the inside, but can't quite get to the flank of the leader. He'll have to settle back in line.
Roman knows he's got the advantage coming out of this corner. Contact in the background. Black gets into a little bit of a scuffle with 2 other cars. Maybe they'll be able to resume. Oh, there's definitely left front damage on the front of that Chevy Sonic 1. An unfortunate turn of events down in turn 5.
Like that was Holmstrom and Black, the 2 that were unable to drive away from the contact. There was at least 1 other car involved too. We'll try and identify that if we can. It's still green flag for the leaders at the moment. Roman actually has a bit of an advantage, about half a second, which is massive in this class. Goertz is under attack. He's got Schmidt and Jägel and Patry all breathing down his neck.
Roman was smart to leave the door open at turn 5 just enough to maintain his momentum, and he knows that Mazda 2 is strong in the middle sector. Fantastic job from the drivers of B-Spec to clear the way at turn 5. I think we're going to stay free and green to continue this championship race with 10 laps to go. A little bit of damage on the front of the Karchik's car as well as Chris Taylor. This thing has been a little bit shoulders out, elbows out since the green flag flew, but we'll get a chance to breathe here down the back straightaway as Myles Goertz and Caleb Patry a bit closer to the back of Rich Roman into Canada corner.
Another look at the incident. Just looked like a spin in the mid-pack.
Yeah, Karchik got to the back of Stuart Black, and now that Chevy Sonic sitting perpendicular to the track. Unfortunately, everyone else with the momentum just didn't have enough time to react.
Pendergrass was the 3rd car that got a piece of that. The number 156 looked like he nosed into that and was able to drive away. And as far as we can tell, at least, is still in the fray. And to your point, great job by those involved to get those cars to a cutout spot. It lets us stay green, and that was something that race director Steve Pence, in his 3rd and final year in that role, he really stressed that, didn't he, in the driver's briefing, to try and preserve as much green flag racing for others if you've hit misfortune.
Well, this is interesting. I misidentified the Caleb Patry car. That's actually Eric Jägel in the Coke bottle livery Honda Fit. Those 2 second-gen Honda Fits look like they have decided to work together just enough, at least for this lap anyway. Myles Goertz goes to the lead. Rich Roman drops to 3rd.
Eric Jägel from Brownsburg, Indiana, just outside of Indianapolis, with a really strong run. Started 6th on the outside of the 3rd row, but has driven his way up into the 2nd spot. It's a 4-car breakaway. Conway's trying to keep pace with him. Pretty good recovery after getting shuffled back on the initial start to get back up to 5th.
Blair Deffenbaugh and Stephanie Anderson still going at it down in about 10th position. But as that lap panned out, I would say this is starting to look a little bit better, although he's not in the lead anymore for Rich Roman and Dan Conway, who are now only one car apart. Patry looks to the outside in the first-gen Honda Fit. Down in the braking zone, Jägel gives a bump draft through the apex to Goertz, trying to get a push up the hill. Now watch this Mazda 2 through the debris. It shatters everywhere. No attack this time into turn 6 from Roman.
And it's quite a debris field that everyone has to negotiate there. Looks like they were able to do so, but you hope nothing punctures one of the Goodyear tires that is used here in the B-Spec class. It's always a concern anytime you have major contact like that, and especially in a production-based class where you've got headlights and things like that that can shatter and leave some really sharp debris. Into the carousel. It is Goertz showing the way. Native of Iowa. A strong run all week long. Qualified second, made a big jump in day 2 of qualifying. There's the 59 with some problems.
Yeah, this is Gail Corley looking like some sort of mechanical issue. Going to hop out of the car. I think that's inside driver's left in turn 6. This driver was making some big moves earlier in the race, but another Mazda 2 bites the dust here in B-Spec as we have a bit of a 5-car breakaway towards the front. This is that part of the race, as I mentioned earlier, maybe some time to be a little bit patient, especially maybe as you're Rich Roman, you see your preferred teammate in your mirrors. He could race to the front if he wants to, potentially, but maybe take a little bit of a break, try to keep this thing close, and get a friendlier face a little bit closer. Don't forget about Josh Schmidt. He's the Chevy Sonic, sits in the 6th position. That maroon car has ebbed and flowed in this race, but is kept in contact as he's developed a little bit of a breakaway from Chris Taylor and Robin Carson.
Taylor's been climbing up the ranks here today. Didn't have the best qualifying result. Started outside of the top 10, if memory serves. Yeah, back in 15th, but has driven his way up to 7th. At least that was on the last time around. We'll check his progress this time by as we look at the Sylva, North Carolina native, Blair Deffenbaugh, part of a racing family. Grew up coming to the racetrack and told me effectively, yeah, I had no hope. There was no hope for me. I was going to be involved in racing one way or the other.
I was doomed. And weren't we all in a way? This is a blast to see so many friendly faces, fans, family, and drivers here at the Runoffs as the B-Spec race continues to approach about halfway. Fastest car last time through, Dan Conway in the green Mazda 2, the number 98. But interestingly enough, at the top, Jägel and Roman chose to go through on Myles Goertz. A little bit of shuffling here at the top.
Stephanie Anderson involved in this battle here that we're keeping an eye on. Running right behind Deffenbaugh. Back to the front of the pack.
A little bit of a snake while they try to bump draft each other down to the braking zone, just clearing 110 or so miles an hour.
Oh, lock up from Roman, who goes wide down at the bottom of the hill in turn 5. That opens the door. At least 2 cars will pounce and come through. Conway's trying to line him up at the top of the hill in 6.
Drops the tires on the outside of turn 6. Maybe he continues to have some issues. It sounded like the anti-lock brakes of that car got a little upset as he touched the outside curb coming into turn 5. Got into a bit of a wiggle. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise as the 2 Mazda 2s find themselves back nose to tail, but it's all Honda Fits at the front this year. 2nd-gen cars lead the way for the top 2, and the 1st-gen Honda Fit of Caleb Patry slides in front.
We talked at the start about drivers wanting to have a plan, someone they could work with over the course of this race. I have to pardon my ignorance here. Is communication between cars allowed? Can you have radio communication with other cars in the race?
Certainly, yeah. The radio comms, as far as I understand, there's no rules with that. There's also hand signals, and you can even communicate with the body language. Experienced drivers can absolutely show you this is what's going to happen right now, whether it be I'm going to let you go through or I'm not. Rich Roman has a decent recovery, tucks up underneath the back end and pops to the inside, going down into California.
Good passing opportunity here. Down to Canada corner. We'll wait and see if he can make the move. Here he goes to the inside and will take that 3rd spot back. So you're right. Strong recovery as he picks up that right rear. Rear tires don't do a whole lot in this class. Front wheel drive, so it's the front wheels that do the bulk of the work.
Rich Roman is looking a little bit impatient. Don't say that negatively. He looks like he's not going to be particularly waiting around for anybody to work with or any opportunity. And I think he partially knows that because this race could go yellow at any moment. He actually won the championship last year because he took the opportunity to take this top spot away in the middle of the race, and we never went back to green flag. So you see in that number 1 Mazda 2, he is absolutely on it, making every move, every chance he gets. Rather than trying to be a little bit more patient, the car that's being the most patient right now, I would say, is Myles Goertz, pushing Eric Jägel down into turn 1, starting lap number 7.
Totally agree. He had him lined up, but never looked like he had any notion of popping out of line. Instead, he kept the bumper locked to the front of Jägel's number 46, trying to build the gap over the hard-charging Roman. Patry right there as well, as is Conway and Schmidt, the pole sitter. A bit of a distant 6, but still trying to remain in contention.
Patry pushing Roman back into the same space as the leaders down into turn 1 and turn 3. They're basically equidistant between each other. The top 5 down into the braking zone for turn 5 on lap number 7 here. And this is the sector the Mazdas are good. Maybe this lap is the one where they'll try to take the positions away. 6
cars at the line, covered by 0.7 of a second. That's how close it is in B-Spec as we look to crown the first national champion of 2025 here at the 62nd SCCA National Championship Runoffs presented by Sunoco. Battle is on for second. Here comes Roman, 2-time defending champ, up the inside of the 41 of Goertz in turn 6. It's not quite done yet, and Goertz gets shoved off wide, or maybe he just opened the wheel up and went wide on his own. In any event, he loses the position, but crucially is able to tuck back in line without any further loss of position.
Exactly, going to maintain momentum. Now Conway looks down the inside of Patry, thinks better of it. They're going to stay single file. Big flick for Roman down into turn number 8 into that longest flat out run. All of that scuffling has brought Josh Schmidt and the Chevy Sonic just a little bit closer yet again. Jägel continues to lead this one in the Honda Fit, but now he's got a Mazda 2 following him. The frantic Rich Roman trying to get back to the front.
You surprised we haven't seen Schmidt flexing any muscle yet?
I'm not sure, that is the biggest motor car, but it seems like it doesn't necessarily have anything special over anybody else. He did find all that time qualifying day 2, as you mentioned, but he's not coming back on his own pace. He's getting a little bit closer every time they battle, and that usually is a sign of good balance between the cars.
He's the current Super Tour points leader, is Josh Schmidt. He would earn a super sweep, very hard to do if he were to win this race. As we mentioned, that jump from day 1 to day 2, that was enough for him to earn the Hawk Breakthrough Award in the B-Spec class for most time gained from day 1 of qualifying to day 2. But right now he finds himself a somewhat distant 6th, but not entirely out of the conversation. That's the maroon car at the very back of this train.
Roman telling me last night that he runs a little bit more toe out in the back of that Mazda 2, which means the outside tires point to the rear tires point to the outside of the car. You can see how much more nervous and lively that car appears to be on corner entry than any other car. He said it sometimes feels a little bit wild. You're a little bit sideways all the time, but it helps you carry momentum as now this battle for 7th is heated up as well.
Yeah, it's Chris Taylor leading this train. He's been the hard charger of the race so far, from 15th up to 7th. That group has largely been able to cooperate and stay in line, although the cooperation breaks up a little bit. Like that was Stephanie Anderson taking a peek, but ultimately does stay in the train. Anderson running in 10th right now, which would mesh well with her goals. She said a top 10, top 5 would be a great result here on home soil. Grew up coming to this racetrack with a bunch of friends who were involved in racing, and that's where the hook was set. So a special, special place for Stephanie.
It's a great observation with the teamwork this pack of 4 has started. They've been in a lot of action towards the beginning of this race, but they're bringing themselves ever so slightly closer to the top 6, and that's not an insurmountable gap as soon as this top 6 starts to scrum. Speaking of scrum, side by side for second down into 5.
Yep, here comes Goertz to the inside there, and Goertz will take second spot from Roman. It's still Jägel in the Coke colors out in front. Patry, Conway, Schmidt now very much dropping off of this train, but still trying to stay and keep pace with the front 5, but having a hard time doing so in the full-sitting car.
Dan Conway has moved past Caleb Patry, just a little position change there for 4th and 5th. Also, funny enough, in the live stream chat, Derek Ambrose already shared with us the motor let go down at 8, RIP. So he's already out of the car and interacting with watching the rest of this race. Hello to all the fans watching us. Continue to watch Stephanie Anderson running 10th, trying to get this battle for 7th towards the front.
Well, I hate to see it. Derek, who's a great competitor, making his 12th runoffs appearance and busy this year as well, running the Mazda program in SRO's touring car category. To see Derek and that crew in Indianapolis in a couple of weeks' time for the season finale of that championship. Some definite bodywork damage on the top 2 in this pack. Interesting that Taylor can stay ahead of this group, although maybe there's even more flapping bodywork in the second car in the class. Karsick, sitting there in the 8th spot, has a fender flapping in the breeze.
We've seen some bump drafts through the apex of some of these corners, which most of the drivers will welcome. It helps you get off the corner a little bit quicker, but that's potentially where the front end damage of that Mazda 2 came from. Taking a look back at the front, Eric Jägel had a great run last year, didn't necessarily get the finish he wanted, but this year has continued to lead the way, I would say, with quite a bit of help from Goertz, who's been very, Myles Goertz, I've called him Austin a couple times, excuse me, but Myles Goertz has been a pretty good flank, a pretty good rear gunner, I would say, for those two Mazda Honda Fits.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Jägel guards the inside there along the pit wall, getting the bump from Goertz, who's having a solid day. These two seem to be willing to cooperate. They've yet to be able to pull away in any kind of meaningful way because up to this point, Roman and Conway and the like have been able to keep pace because they too have been willing to work together.
Look at the momentum from Roman through turn 1, using all the pavement available, but very productively as he rolls the speed in that number 1 Mazda 2 through turn 1, and that kind of pace is what keeps bringing him back into the conversation when they come onto this back straightaway, the Moraine sweep into turn 5. They're just there again.
Interesting that Patrick is starting to lose that top 4. He really needs them to start squabbling amongst themselves and maybe have Schmidt catch up to try and push ahead and make it a 6-car train at the front of the pack once again. But right now it's become a 4-car scrap for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, with Jägel leading the way.
A pair of Honda Fits leading a pair of Mazda 2s. The 2s are strongest in this middle sector, choosing to do nothing with it this time. Potentially no opportunity for Roman or Conway. All the track at turn 6, those curves, you got to be a little bit careful, and I would say throw that out the window at this point in the championship race, but they are so rough. They can knock the alignment out, they can certainly float the car if you're not on top of the wheel.
You mentioned the way last year's race played out, Tom, and Ridge went to the lead and took it. Then there was the interruption, and ultimately the race never resumed, and he ends up with the national championship, his 2nd in a row. On one hand, you want to be patient in a situation like this. You want to keep the powder dry with still 4.5 laps to go. But on the other hand, you don't know when that crucial flag could come out that would ultimately signal the end of the race.
Exactly. And, you know, the longer the race stays green, the more likely it is to stay green. But these drivers are probably pretty aware of what's going on behind them as well, as they can probably see that things have spread out just a little bit. That eases the tension just slightly in the helmet. But if you get the opportunity, it's really hard to not take it. And we're now seeing down the back straightaway after the middle sector, coming into sector 3, those Honda Fits start to pull out just a little bit from the exit of the carousel down into Canada Corner. Curious to see if anything different happens exiting Canada Corner into the final 2, turns 13 and 14. It appears that the Fits maybe a little bit stronger in that final sector. Caleb Patry has worked his way a bit closer back to the battle in the top 5 at the back bumper of Dan Conway.
Any idea what would account for the Honda Fit's relative strength in that part of the track?
You know, B-Spec, as close as everything is, gearing is more than anything the most important. That's why we see the Mazda 2 so good out of the slow corners. It has the tallest 2nd gear. They have to shift the latest, which gives them the biggest run. The Honda Fit tends to have a pretty good gearbox once they hit about 4th gear, where the Mazda starts to fall on its face, probably right about this part of the track. Although this run for Rich Roman, does he have the opportunity to look to the inside? No. The cooperation continues. Co-opetition, maybe, at this point in the race.
It is such a big part of any kind of spec racing, especially low horsepower spec racing at this track. And the drivers will tell you it's almost a different discipline of racing compared to when, let's say, the runoffs were held at Sonoma Raceway, for example, which doesn't have long straightaways, tight and compact by comparison to Road America, and it almost takes a different mindset, different style of driving.
The other part is how many options you have for passing here at Road America. It gets you, kind of baits you into the opportunity because of the compression that happens down in these braking zones. For example, as we watch them come into turn 5, you're clearing 110 miles an hour, then slowing down to just under 50. That compresses the field down so close, it makes you want to take a pass, but maybe the opportunity isn't quite there. So you have to be very aware of that ebb and flow, and that happens about 4 times around Road America, at turn 3, at turn 5, at turn 8, and at Canada Corner. It is very tempting to get racy at Road America.
Jägel out in front, running a really disciplined race to this point. Very impressive, making just his second runoffs appearance. Of course, finished on the podium 1 year ago. Right now has a bit of a gap back to the 41 of Goertz, but that will close up pretty quickly as long as the trailing 4 cars, and it is now a 4-car group, making it a 5-car train at the top of this field. Patrick's been able to catch back up to this train. As long as they stay together, 2nd through 5th, they'll be able to run down the leader once again.
Myles Goertz a little bit off pace in the middle sector this time through. You see the gap that's formed between the top 2 cars. It's not the end-all be-all, as you see now that 4th and 5th gear of the Honda Fit starts to pull away from the Mazda 2s. The Patry is absolutely there on Dan Conway. Maybe that first-gen Honda Fit will have an opportunity to look to the inside. Conway starts to cover driver's right just ever so slightly into the braking zone. Inside the 3-board, hard on the brakes, down into 3rd gear for both of these cars. Floating the back end for Eric Jägel. He looks so in control right now. These things have fizzled just slightly as everybody kind of takes the breather and starts to think, where is this going to go on these final 2 laps?
As you mentioned, Tom, Jägel was in the fight a year ago. Let's give a shout to Myles Goertz, running this strong 2nd place in 3 previous runoffs appearances. A 14th last year is his best result, so finds himself running at the sharp end and in contention for a title late in the race. Not necessarily a position he's been in before.
The stats sheet for this class is fascinating. The only driver to have won a championship in this class, period, in this race, is Roman. Barely anyone has finished on the podium outside of that. Stuart Black has been up there once. Eric Jägel has been up there once. Rich Roman has been in there as well. But basically everybody else has never been on the podium, and that is going to be so tempting to fight tooth and nail once this thing starts to wind down. A little bit of a late turn in there for Roman. Tough to see through these cars as you see the high greenhouse on them. You kind of have to practice looking through the windows. Jägel looking still really, really nice and under control as Myles Goertz continues to run rear gunner for him.
Car I've got my eye on is the car in 5th, and that Patry machine just did its best lap the last 2 laps in a row. In fact, just did a 2:53.7, which is within a 10th of the best lap of the race so far. Part of that, though, was, of course, catching this train and a big draft to draw upon, and it's helped him close up. But it's a driver with a lot of experience at this track and plenty of pace in the car, it would appear, as Goertz looks inside of Jägel down at the bottom of turn 5. It was a furtive glance at most, but it does open the door here for Roman to take a charge to the inside in turn 6 for fighting for 2nd place.
Side by side through the corner, they knock the fenders just ever so slightly, and Goertz again takes a trip through the dirt. It's worked for him last time, it works for him again this time, as I think he's going to keep the position, in fact, through the grass and holds the point. Now he's got the outside of turn 8. Going to go for the momentum. We're side by side, 2 by 2 down into turn 8.
Look how it lets Jägel escape. Roman does take the spot. Conway, who's had a yo-yo kind of day, up and down, it seems like, every single lap, has to take an attack here on Goertz, fighting for the 2nd spot. Goertz is 3rd spot. Goertz is able to hang on. And in fact, Conway was just overtaken by Patry now, so he drops to the back of this 5-car train.
That was very interesting. I'd say down into turn 5, I think Goertz was looking to protect the position more than trying to pick up the lead. So he was still thinking more about his and Eric Jägel's race. Unfortunately, that opportunity for Roman to pick up the side-by-side has now changed the dynamic of this race ever so slightly. Goertz gets the run back.
How about this? To the outside he comes in car 41, tries to sweep across the bow of Roman, but Roman won't give the spot up easily. Up and over the curbs, you see the 41 bouncing up and down, able to continue to maintain traction and pull ahead and take the position, and following him through, here comes the hometown hero, Patry. tucked in line behind the 41. Second and third, nose to tail. Jägel has gotten away with just over 2 laps to go, but is it too soon?
What a race this is shaping up to be. A little bit of a breakaway for Jägel, and all 4 of these drivers are aware enough of this class. They may be smart enough to take a little bit of a breather and make sure they're not racing for second. You don't want to be racing for the wrong position as this thing winds down. 2 to go. Next time by, we're working lap number 11 of 13.
Here's why it matters if you're in one of those fights or not. Jägel ran a 2:54.7. It was mid-255s for that group that was fighting amongst themselves, but it doesn't take long once they get back in order to run down the race leader. Jägel's got his mirrors full. Here comes Goertz once again with Patry in tow.
One good turn 1 and everybody's back together. This thing is going to be a barn burner for these last couple of corners, but Jägel continues to lead the way. Goertz finds himself back into second. He's been the team player of this pack. Patry, he's been the quiet one. He's been in the back of this pack for so many laps in a row, now finds himself third. And then the mover and shaker, Roman, willing to throw anything at this race at this point as Goertz, I think, looks for the protection once again. No, he goes for the move. Patry's pushing him, takes the point.
How about that power move with a bump of assistance from behind, puts the 41 to the lead, but they tangle, they triple over one another, and Jägel is back through to the point.
That's going to give Roman and Conway both a huge run. They go 3 wide up into turn 6. Conway backs out of it. Roman sticks the nose in on Patry. Oh, so tight, shoves him off the track just a little bit more. That dirt doesn't seem to matter much in a B-Spec car. I think Patry's going to keep the position over Conway, side by side through 7.
Jägel leads. What a remarkable recovery for him. Goertz is second. Here's Roman side by side for 4th and 5th with Conway in the green car to the inside of Patry, who's been shuffled back after challenging for the lead earlier in this lap.
That's that temptation to make moves in those compression zones, those braking zones. You saw Myles Goertz just not able to adjust his braking point successfully enough. Patry followed him in hot. Here is that battle for the lead. So he got a little bit too much momentum in, maybe even a touch at the turn-in point. It's going to shove both of them a little bit wide as they were probably going maybe 2 or 3 miles an hour faster than they're used to down to the braking zone. Eric Jägel sees it coming from a mile away. So smart, great racecraft to tuck up underneath and go 3 wide through back to the lead.
When asked to name some potential contenders for the B-Spec title this year, the 2-time champ Rich Roman said Eric Jägel certainly is one to keep an eye on. That has played out to this point in the race. Those are 2 of the 3 contenders coming down to the wire, with Goertz sandwiched in between the 2 of them. Just a couple of corners left, and then the white flag when they come around the start-finish line one more time.
From a 5-car battle to a 3-car at this point, anything could still happen. As we've seen these drivers somehow find their way back to each other. Roman slings it through the final corner. He struggled with that corner last year. This year going for as much speed as possible. I think he knows the Mazda 2 is weak in this first sector, trying to stay as close as possible coming to the white flag.
1 lap, 4 miles to settle a national champion in B-Spec. There's the white flag as Jägel leads the field across the start-finish line. Goertz stays in line, trying to make this just a 2-car fight to settle the championship in 2025. Roman, if he's going to make it 3 in a row, he's got some work to do. He's dropped off the tail of the leading pair.
What a way to start the runoffs. It's a 1-lap shootout at this point. The question is, Eric Jägel has done a masterful job of managing this race, but Myles Goertz has been the perfect teammate. Does he take those gloves off? Does he change his strategy at this point? He's only got about 4 passing opportunities left to make this thing happen.
The pole sitter Schmidt runs alone in 6th. Deffenbaugh now leads that 2nd train ahead of Anderson, Taylor, and Pekarsik. But all eyes are fixed at the front of this field with less than a lap to go. Jägel guarding the inside line jealously as Goertz takes a look around the outside, now tucks back to the inside, but not close enough, or perhaps just unwilling to make a move at this stage. Through turn 5 cleanly. Jägel under the Corvette bridge now, bends to the left. Goertz in tow, and Roman is there lurking, again trying to make it 3 in a row in B-Spec. But his first, it would be, since making the switch to the Mazda. Now through the hurry downs for the final time. Jägel and Goertz with Roman in tow. Running out of time to make that move. anyone outside of the top 3 get into this mix, Tom?
I think they're running out of time. It's basically a 3-horse race at this point, and the question is whether or not Roman has enough oomph in that Mazda 2 to make something happen down into Canada Corner. I think that's his last opportunity. Uses every inch and then some, coming out of the carousel flat out easily in these cars through the kink. But Myles, Goertz, keep an eye out for this Honda. It goes to the right. Not allowed to block. Eric Jägel has to take the outside line down into Canada Corner.
Pair of Hondas in the Mazda, and it's the Honda side by side that lets Roman in the Mazda get ever closer. The 41 sweeps to the inside and grabs the lead down to Canada Corner. Just a couple of corners to go on the final lap. Goertz leads Jägel, leads Roman, coming up the hill.
Jägel with the over-under gets the outside run, which will become the inside for turn 14. This is exactly what Roman wants to see, them battling everything they've got. Shoves Eric Jägel up the inside, gets a little bit of a thumbs up, and there's that huge uphill race to the green, to the checkered flag.
3-car breakaway to win the B-Spec National Championship. Jägel's at the front. Right behind him is Roman, but Goertz pokes out to the outside. It's side by side for second and third, but time runs out for those two as Jägel comes to the checkered flag and for the first time is a SCCA Runoffs National Champion. This time in the B-Spec class. The gap 0.3 of a second. Roman across the line in second. Goertz will take the bronze medal.
Drag race for Deffenbaugh and Taylor. Pekarsik looks to the inside as well. 3 wide across the line for 8th position. Stephanie Anderson comes home 7th. Deffenbaugh picks up 8th. Thumbs up everywhere.